Hey guys, welcome to my geek rant. So most of you are familiar with the 7 forms of lightsaber combat and their applications. If you are unfamiliar with lightsaber forms, I suggest reading The Jedi Path or Jedi vs. Sith, The Essential Guide to the Force. Or if you are allergic to reading, you can watch Jin Sarai's collection of videos. Be sure to read those books or watch the videos beforehand. In this video, I'll be going over the benefits and detractions of each form. My examination of the pros and cons of each form are not hard and fast rules, they are more overall guidelines. The use of each form is always determined by the skill of the specific practitioner. Still, I think I'm forming a pretty solid basis for each form. As a side note, I'll be examining only the dueling-oriented forms, so styles like Form 5 Shien will be skipped over. First up is Form 1 SHII-CHO. This form has applications for offense and defense, but it is weak against forms geared towards single opponents. SHII-CHO was weak against Makashi and Form 7 JUYO and VAAPAD. These forms were oriented to single opponents, while SHII-CHO prospered under the assault of multiple opponents. Form 1 was strong against the application of Jar-Kai and multiple adversaries. Because of its simplicity, it left the user with many options against the assault of multiple enemies. Respected users of the form were Mitra Surik, Kit Fisto, and Kyle Katarn. Next up is Form 2 MAKASHI. This form favored offense with little focus on defense. Particularly, its blade work was used to work around an opponent's defense, rather than power through it. Makashi was weak against strength-based forms with kinetic energy, like Form 5 JUYO So, Ataru, and Form 7. Because Makashi was based around fencing principles of stabs and leverage, it did not bolster a lot of strength to contend with power-based forms. Still, Makashi was strong against SHII-CHO, Niman, and in some cases, Form 7. The function of SHII-CHO and Niman were often no match because Makashi was dedicated to single combat with intense focus. It cut around the tactics of the jack-of-all-trades arrangements. Because Makashi is a precision form, it could dance around the erratic nature of Form 7 if the practitioner could get around the strength of the form. Prominent users of the form were Kasim, Count Dooku, and Darth Vader. Next we have Form 3 SORESU. This form was all about defense, with no applications in offense. SORESU had no weakness against the other forms, aside from the very best Form 7 masters. According to the Jedi Path, only the very best Form 7 users were strong enough to penetrate a Form 3 specialist. However, the Essential Guide to the Force states that no Form 3 master has ever been defeated in lightsaber to lightsaber combat. SORESU was strong against every form of lightsaber combat, but ultimately, it only delayed the inevitable. Practitioners of Form 3 often engage in wars of attrition, waiting for their enemies to tire or slip up. Famous practitioners of the form were Darth Traya, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Luke Skywalker. Next up is Form 4 ATARU. This form favored offense with very little defense in mind. It was a speed form based around quick bursts of agility, utilized against single opponents. ATARU was weak against SORESU and multiple opponents. A Form 3 specialist could outlast the taxing applications of Form 4. This is why ATARU is advised as a supplemental form rather than a dedicated one. It was also weak against multiple adversaries because of its dedicated use to offensive sequences. Even so, ATARU was strong against Form 5 JUYO So. JUYO So was noted to lack mobility as it was rooted in strength-based parries and counters. An ATARU specialist could exploit this flat-footed form with his or her own agility. Prominent users of ATARU were Ahsoka Tano, Yoda, and Qui-Gon Jinn. Next up is Form V DJEM SO. This form was a perfect balance between offensive and defensive tactics. Its strikes were strength-based and were often used by stocky brutes. DJEM SO is weak against Ataru and Soresu. Ataru had more mobility than DJEM SO's staid approach to combat. Soresu was effective against DJEM SO because, like Ataru, DJEM SO was taxing on the user's energy pool. While Ataru taxed one's speed cache, DJEM SO taxed the user's strength reserves. However, DJEM SO was very effective against Makashi and somewhat effective against Form 7. A DJEM SO specialist could plow through the lacking kinetic defenses of Makashi as long as said user would be able to avoid the lunges and stabs of Form 2. A Form 5 specialist could also potentially counter the dedicated offense of JUYO and VAAPAD. While a user of Soresu could be broken by Form 7, DJEM SO had the power to counter the strong flurries of JUYO. Notable practitioners of the form were Darth Bane, Anakin Skywalker, and Luke Skywalker. Next we have Niman, which is very interesting. Niman was a balance of dueling and force feats. It was not as precise as Form 2, not as defensive as Form 3, not as fast as Form 4, and not as strong as Form 5. It was a form of moderation, used mostly by those who wanted to focus on their force abilities or defeat common thugs. It was notably weak against the dueling prowess of Makashi, though it was not necessarily weak against other forms. Debatably, it was even strong against Form 7 practitioners who were open to force attacks. The value of Niman came from its user and the circumstance of the battle instead of its inherent qualities. Noteworthy users of the form were Revan, Ko Sinjarach, and Sindralig. Before I get to the final form, I would like to make a note of Jar-Kai. While not an official form of lightsaber combat, it was often used as a supplement to other forms, notably Ataru and Niman. The form was based around dual-wield fencing. It favored offense more than anything else, coupled with a relatively weak defense to strength-based attacks. Though Jar-Kai is effective against multiple opponents thanks to the additional blade, it sacrificed strength for speed. A user of Jar-Kai withered under the assault of a Form 5 or 7 specialist. What's more, users of the form often became too reliant on their second blade, and frequently neglected the use of the Force during combat. Exceptional users of the form were Qasim, Asajj Ventress, and the Starkiller clone. Last we have Form 7, JUYO and VAAPAD. This form was notably based around the user and best used in one-to-one combat. It required raw emotion, dedicated to offense with no regard to defense. It mixed the principles of Ataru and DJEM SO, utilizing lightning-fast strikes with mighty blows. Form 7 was strong against Soresu. As noted in the Jedi Path, it is the only form known to break the stonewall defense of a Soresu master. JUYO and VAAPAD were also strong against Makashi's lack of kinetic defense, so long as the user managed to evade Form 2's stabs. However, it was weak against the counters of DJEM SO and the force powers of Niman. Because Form 7 was such a dedicated offense, the practitioners often left themselves open to the counters of an opponent's blade or force powers. Also, there is a special note between JUYO and VAAPAD. JUYO users were more susceptible to the weaknesses of Form 7, losing focus or becoming too reliant on the energies of their opponents. VAAPAD users were more likely to keep a cool head, but were less likely to put as much strength behind their strikes. Significant users of the form were Lord Scourge, Darth Maul, and Mace Windu. And that's it. Let me know what you think of my analysis. Of course, the strength and weaknesses of each form are my own opinion. but the forms themselves are chronicled in several sourcebooks and several novels. And of course, peace, love, and may the Force be with you. Always. They both held immense power with their use of the Force, Yoda as the avatar of light, Bane as the nexus of the dark.
No, why are you mowing your lawn right now? I'm recording a Let's Play.
Whoops. Good thing Kindles are resilient. Kindles are resilient.